What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Bucks. And sadly, Summer League is over and it didn't end in rings for the Las Vegas Bucks. And while we're in a little bit of mourning about the way that Summer League ended, we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about all the key guys that people are interested in. What are the takeaways from Summer League? It's also a very important anniversary today, and there'll be more important anniversaries over the next few days. What does that mean? Let's find out.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on the show Monday to Friday. For a few more weeks, I think August, we're going to bring it back to about 3 shows per week. I need to rest the voice. But in the meantime, watch us on YouTube. Get us wherever you get your podcast alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. Of course, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or your first watch of every day. And we appreciate all the subscriptions coming through on YouTube as well. It's not like you have to pay for it. You just have to click a button. So you guys should all just get on board and do that for us. We really appreciate it. Frank, before we get started here, we need a little shout out for our friend Dan Schaefer. He sent us a note the other day, and so I'm just going to read the tweet because you probably have more info than me. But Milwaukee record and the recombobulation area, which is Dan's fantastic website / blog / whatever you want to call it, but it's fantastic anyway. Newsletter. They're joining forces to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the greatest moment in Milwaukee sports history. There's going to be a rewatch of Game 6, which everyone would love to go and do together with a bunch of other Bucks fans at what is this place called? Cooper? Is it Cooper Age? Cooperage, Milwaukee. So make sure you go check it out and go support our friend Dan. And basically, more importantly, just go have a few beers, a few frothies, and watch the Bucks win a title. Doesn't get any better than that, Frank. I'd go if I was in the area.
Yeah, it was actually it had me thinking of maybe getting a couple of my local Bucks buddies here in Austin together to do a watch. We actually had said last summer we were going to do that at some point. Just rewatch game 6, and I know the last week or so, right, since we are now in sort of the year anniversary period of the finals. We've been kind of reliving the signature plays, and today being the 17th of July. Of course, the value that we stole, right? It was the value was that DeAndre Ayton game winner against the Clippers or whatever, and then the Bucks had a better alley-oop in the Valley, and we stole the value moniker. So hopefully people had a chance to enjoy some of the reminiscing about Game 5 happening a year ago, and I feel like probably all of us remember exactly where we were watching that game and where we were when Drew Holiday rips the ball away from Devin Booker and leads the alley-oop for Giannis. And I'm trying to find the pod we did, like the tweet from that day, Kane, because I wanted to retweet that. I actually listened to part of it this afternoon while I was walking my dog, just because I wanted to I was kind of like, I wonder what were we like in that pod? I mean, other than there's I guess 3 games from last year's playoff run that sort of stand out as being the ones that we were probably most just giddy about, and obviously Game 6 being the obvious one, but Game 7 against the Nets and then Game 5 against the Suns are the 2 others that immediately come to mind. And it was interesting to kind of re-listen to us trying to process what just happened while also having to acknowledge that they had not won a championship yet. And now I personally, the next 2 days was this weird combination of anticipation, anxiety, excitement, happiness from Game 5, all that stuff just kind of mashed into one. And those 2 days between Game 5 and Game 6 were just some of the longest days, partly because I also flew back to Milwaukee for Game 6 and had flight delays and all this stuff kind of happened. I got in at 2 a.m. on the day of Game 6. So anyway, but yeah, I feel like we'll be reminiscing about that the rest of our lives. Hopefully we'll have more championships to to reminisce about as well. But if we only were to get that one, what a run it was.
Yeah, and we got it. As we sort of referenced, or as we mentioned last week in the pod as well, you get these anniversary moments that flash up. They take you back there. I've mentioned before, every now and then I'll go back and watch even just the condensed versions of the whole games. In the Nets series, I've done the same. But watching the Rise movie last week, you get the end of movie. They run you through some of the highlights throughout Giannis's career. I told you it was an emotional moment in the Pittman household of one. But it's still extraordinary to me to go back and watch those highlights, and still something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. I just didn't think the Bucks were going to win a championship. To go back, even though it was a year ago, even though there's been another NBA champion since then, it's fun. It's fun to do it, and I'm sure I'll be doing it for years. Hopefully we've got more titles to go. But even if the Bucks win more titles, nothing will be more special than the first one, and the unlikeliness of it, or however you want to describe it.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, you could argue about winning a second one you could argue it could be more special because it's harder to repeat. But no, 50 years and not just 50 years of not winning a championship, but not even feeling like you could entertain a championship. And then the last few years building a team that you thought could win a championship, but falling short, right? I mean, the stress, right? I mean, it made me weirdly appreciate the years when we had no expectations because they were not very stressful. But thankfully, obviously now we can just look back on it. And again, just so many small plays that happened during that run. You just never know, right? Any championship, I think, comes down to just guys making big plays at crucial times. And, Giannis, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, the principal guys, but, others like Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, just so much fun thinking about back to that run. And I think also just about the community that came together to support it, right? I mean, I know, Kane, obviously you were half a world away during the run. I was mostly 1,000 miles away, and then was able to come back for the last game. But it was cool just to see the fan base virtually come together, but also, I mean, I still just, I kind of get goosebumps still just seeing some of the shots, like when you watch highlights of the Deer District reacting to huge plays and stuff like that. I mean, it's just really cool. So hopefully we will have more of that again in our future. But, regardless of what happens, banners fly forever. And I think we'll always, I still just look at my face, right? I still have this just stupid grin on my face thinking about it. And, no disappointment moving forward can ever erase that. But anyway, we have really important summer league basketball to get at, Kane, don't we? We need to render some verdicts on this ever important last, whatever it was, 10 days from Las Vegas, don't we?
We certainly do. Let's get to Summer League. And let me just quickly, one last final point. You brought up something that is important. How ridiculous it is that literally every day, thousands of people listen to some guy from Australia and a man that obviously is a local, but now lives in Austin, talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. So let's just acknowledge how crazy these people are that listen to us or watch us every day. Let's get to Summer League stuff. Before we do, Bet Online, you got the odds where Donovan Mitchell might be traded. What do you think, Frank? What's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell here? And then I can give some of the odds for Bet Online here.
I mean, the Knicks just seem like the odds-on favorite, just given kind of the appetite for Mitchell's presumed interest in going to a place like New York. The Knicks kind of big game hunting, some of the personal kind of connections there, and the fact that they took some lumps on draft night for some of the moves, but they have a bounty of picks that they could throw at the Utah Jazz. And certainly looking at what they did with the Rudy Gobert trade, it does not look like that the Jazz are looking to, add proven players per se. I don't even know if they want RJ Barrett, right? Which you normally would say, like, oh, I assume they would want RJ Barrett. They might not even want that, but so we'll see. But yeah, the Knicks kind of by default are my assumption, but who knows, right? I mean, it's been interesting just which trades have happened, and perhaps just as importantly, which trades haven't happened with all the noise and bluster around KD and Kyrie and those guys. At this point, I don't know. Like, part of me just looks at that team and is just like, why don't you guys just run it back, get over yourselves, and just try to, if KD loves Kyrie so much, like, well, prove it. Just play with the guy, because you actually have a pretty good team if you're willing to sort of stomach his personality.
Well, that's a good point you make. And BetOnline has all these latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball and also NFL, which is right around the corner, among other sports. But if you are interested in the Donovan Mitchell markets, the Knicks are the favorites to get Donovan Mitchell for obvious reasons. Then Miami, then Boston, which would be interesting. Then the Nets, as Frank mentioned, the Lakers are in there as well. I don't know how they would do it. And of course, the Warriors there, because Golden State can get involved in anything. But go to betonline.net. And you can check it all out. It's the fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite sports and events, including also MMA, boxing, and golf. Shout out to Cam Smith, the Aussie. The fantastic win at the Open this morning. The whole country is just elated today. But head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, back to Summer League. So done and dusted. The Bucks finished 3-2. I don't know what's going on with this schedule. I think it's a joke. I think the Bucks, Boston just keeps on doing it to us. But that one-legged, off-balance, stupid little runner cost the Bucks potentially a championship ring here in Las Vegas. But today's game was a bit of a, let's be honest, I didn't get up at 6 a.m. on Monday morning to watch this game, and I was very glad that I did not do so. I watched it on replay. And probably the highlight was Flavor Flav on the broadcast during the third quarter, because there was not much going on at this one. So we probably don't have to break down a lot of this, Frank, but I haven't spoke to you for a few days. Let's just start with Beauchamp, should we? We should start with the guy that everyone's interested in. I've given my thoughts after the last couple of games. Where are you at leaving Las Vegas with MarJon?
Yeah, I mean, pretty consistent start to his Vegas campaign, putting 15 or 16 in his first 3 games. Last couple of games, scoring numbers went down, but overall, I think obviously if you're going to take a positive from this, you'd say the 3-point shooting was the obvious thing from him. I think we'd all say that's really the swing skill for him. And to look at his Vegas and what he finished 11 of 24, I believe, 46% from 3. Actually shot better from 3 than he did from 2. Had some air balls, but for the most part, I mean, it's a decent looking shot. It's not like it's like some like weird ugly form he's got that kind of somehow goes in. I don't think they need to, reconstruct his jump shot or something like that, as much as he didn't shoot well from the NBA line in the G League last year at 27%. It looks like a shot that I don't expect him to shoot 46% as a rookie from 3, but you hope that can be something that, maybe he does come in and get into the, I don't know, mid-30s. Does that feel greedy? I don't know if it is greedy right off the bat, just especially given the fact that he's not going to be having to take off the dribble threes, not going to be having to do a lot of self-creation given who else is on the roster. So I think that was the obvious positive for him. But and just defensively, I think just his size, good feet, length, had 5 blocks in 5 games. I thought defensively there were signs of encouragement. But I think we also saw, we saw reasons why MarJon was not a lottery pick, why he was not taken higher. Again, he's going to be 22 by opening night. I thought it's interesting. He was really effective as a transition guy, kind of garbage man in the G League last year. So hopefully we will see more of that come out during the regular season when he's playing on obviously with a much more talented set of teammates. But he had some kind of acrobatic finishes, but you mentioned it the other night with Justin, and you quoted my comment about him being a 2-footed leaper. We saw again tonight early in this game, he had a transition opportunity, and instead of kind of grabbing it and going up strong off 1 foot, kind of maintaining momentum, he stops, goes off of 2 feet, gets blocked. And, his finishing was not, to me, was not impressive. It didn't look that bouncy. He's kind of a smooth athlete, I would say, but in terms of, having, like violent explosion, attacking the rim and dunking on guys, like that doesn't look like the kind of guy he is. And, again, maybe he becomes more explosive getting into, a consistent NBA strength and conditioning program. Maybe they can improve that a little bit. I think his physical strength, can definitely improve. Can add some weight. I think we've talked about the 15 pounds maybe he adds to get stronger on both ends. So I think there's a baseline toolkit there to be a very useful, potentially at some point maybe a starting wing who can be a 3-and-D guy, kind of complementary role playing starter type player. I don't think we saw a whole lot else in terms of evidence that there was much floor game or creation. I think he really struggled putting the ball on the floor, got stripped a lot, handle did not look very tight. So definitely has a lot of room to improve, let's say, with some of those things. But you kind of come back to what he's going to be asked to do on this team, and it's going to be shoot open threes, defend wings, work hard, and just kind of get on transition, try to get easy buckets when everybody else is trying to stop the other guys. So I think you'll have it. I think we usually see this, right? As much as people talk about Mike Budenholzer not liking rookies or not wanting to play rookies, I mean, those guys pretty much always get chances, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guys who've been, first round picks or had draft picks, like they've generally all gotten chances. It's just a question typically of do they really make much of those opportunities or not? And, again, he may not have the longest leash as a rookie, but usually injuries happen at some point, unfortunately. And when we saw last year with Chris Middleton getting hurt in the playoffs, Bucks wing depth all of a sudden looked pretty shallow. We'll see what happens with Jordan Nwora. He's still kind of hanging out there. Bucks do have that extra roster spot. How eager are they to fill that with Jordan and carry 15 guys in the regular season? Unclear. But certainly if Jordan Nwora isn't back, and I would say MarJon Beauchamp being drafted probably makes it less likely. That could certainly play a part to it. And obviously, I think regardless, MarJon's defense is going to, probably be something that would tend to get him a little bit more favor with Bud than the way Jordan defends. But yeah, so I think, I'm curious to see what it'll look like in the preseason, given the Chris, the supposed timetable for Chris coming back close to the regular season due to the wrist injury. I would certainly expect to see MarJon get a lot of run in preseason. And so hopefully he can impress and, make an argument for himself to get some run in the regular season. And are they going to be looking to play Wes Matthews a ton of minutes? Probably not, right? I think they're probably going to, even if they view Wes as a guy that they would rather, Bud would rather stick with in a playoff environment. I don't think he's going to be playing Wes 35 minutes a game during the regular season. So hopefully that means opportunity for MarJon. And, now it's just a matter of seeing exactly how well this toolkit that he has, how well does it translate. And I will say this defensively, getting over screens, I was pretty underwhelmed by some of his work getting over screens. Like there were times where it was like he got screened and it turned into a switch, and I couldn't tell if it was because they were trying to switch or because he just didn't come anywhere close to getting over the screen. And a couple of those today, but a couple of those elsewhere as well. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think, work to be done, but certainly the defensive toolkit is good. And, hopefully that 3-ball continues to be something that he can continue to grow more confident in. And again, I don't think it's crazy to think that he might have a role to play this season, but I also would be, as you know, Kane, I'm the perpetual wet blanket when it comes to young players. I would say let's not be too ambitious and say like, okay, let's pencil him in for playoff rotation minutes at this point, because I think we got to see a little bit more under real basketball, real and NBA circumstances before I would certainly go that far. Yeah,
cue the YouTube comments saying, "Why is Frank always so negative? Why is he negative?" And they say, "Well, he must be new around here. But this is the way we operate." But I will say, for the most part, particularly with MarJon, you've actually been pretty positive overall. Of course, we all like to hope and dream that you get this guy at 24 and straight away he flashes star potential. Like, of course, everyone's like, gee, that would be nice. But he played like a role player in Summer League, which he's going to have to do in the NBA. But you are playing obviously with significantly more talented players in the NBA, and maybe that elevates him. Certainly in that transition game, he should be able to get better opportunities where he doesn't necessarily have to be the player initiating the transition, but he can finish some plays potentially. So we'll see how it all plays out. And I agree, the defensive stuff that he at least showed makes me believe that he's going to get an opportunity. You kind of swerved a little bit. You didn't bring up this conversation, but it's just been something I've been thinking about. I've seen a lot of people discuss it. So starting lineup, your point on Wes Matthews makes a lot of sense to me. Remember, he came probably near the halfway point of the season, didn't start until right before the postseason. I kind of expect if Grayson Allen returns that he'll just go back in the starting lineup. That's just something I'm assuming is going to happen. Do you fall in that category, would you say?
Yeah, I think we were messaging with our friend Eric Name about that, and I think we all sort of came to that general, maybe not conclusion, but that was our best sort of operating hypothesis that barring other moves this summer, that Grayson is probably the most likely guy to come back as a starter next fall, and we'll see, right? I mean, I think part of it again just also gets to the topic of who's going to be playing, who do you want playing and soaking up all these regular season minutes, and with Wes, I think Wes would be my default person right now as the guy that I would most want to start if you had to go play against the Boston Celtics in a first round series tomorrow. But you're not going to have to do that for at least 10 months from now. So I think that's the obvious spot still. You've got 4 starters penciled in at this point, three with black ink. Brook Lopez, I think you can probably say, barring injury, you would assume obviously that would be very shocking if Brook Lopez was not starting at center this fall too. And I don't think Brook Lopez is going to get traded, but just because of injuries or whatever, right? Bobby played very well with Giannis during the regular season, but I think, they realize their bread and butter is with Brook playing as a starter. And again, maybe he doesn't play as many minutes this year, but we'll kind of see what happens. But yeah, I think the shooting guard spot is the obvious one to watch going into camp. And, I think it's probably Grayson Allen's spot to lose, but certainly there's going to be other guys that you can make arguments for. I mean, we never talk about Pat Connaughton. Arguably, Pat is their best shooting guard type player, just given the balance of offense, defense, and the like, and the guy that, gave you huge minutes in fourth quarters of a title run. But, we've just sort of seen that Bud's preference is typically to bring him off the bench. So yeah, I mean, you could, again, I will allow people to make their arguments for MarJon Beauchamp as the role-playing fifth starter. I don't think that's going to happen unless, he really shows a lot in camp or, other guys get injured, whatever it might be. But that said, there's obviously a number of different directions you can go. And, the expectations of that are just obviously you have a bit of a luxury of not having to start a guy that can do everything well necessarily.
There's a lot of things that go into this, and I don't want to jump the gun when we do the over and under podcast in a couple of months' time. Over or under 7.5 starts for MarJon Beauchamp.
It's an interesting one.
Thank you.
I'll go under. I mean, Jordan Morris probably started 4 or 5 games or something like that. I mean, stuff can get really funky, especially if Chris, for instance, were to get hurt. Things could get really funky with the small forward starters. So I wouldn't rule anything out. I'd probably lean under, but I hope it's under just because to me that means that Chris Middleton stays healthy most of the year. But you never know, right? We've seen obviously that the best laid plans go out the window when you have a bunch of injuries.
Yeah, that's what I thought. 7.5 at least takes into account a few of those end of season games where he might sneak a start here or there. All right, Mamu obviously had a stinker today, no doubt about that, as did most of the guys, and they spread the minutes far and wide with some guys that hadn't really played in summer league basketball so far. Overall, though, he was pretty bloody impressive across the first 4 games of summer league. There's no doubt about that. We've certainly questioned whether he was playing a role that he will ever play in the NBA. Probably not. And it's also just really difficult for him, as you've sort of pointed to a number of times. With his size, he's really a 4. So you've got a big fella that's taken up a fair bit of the minutes there. We mentioned Brooke and Bobby and the small ball stuff. So clearly, I think he's improved. Do you see, outside of a situation we don't want to imagine with health, any way that he could crack into some kind of role with this team? It seems like it's going to be a tough proposition.
Yeah, probably. I think we talked last week about just the splits that he had at power forward versus center, and you know how disastrous the on-off numbers were with him at center versus they were at least looking to sort of stay afloat when he was playing power forward. So it's just tough with the numbers game, and I think some of the same caveats you would apply to MarJon at the 3 apply to Mamu at the 4-5. You know, it's just, again, when healthy, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of role. I think for Sandro, I don't think there's really much of any role for him when the Bucks are healthy. But again, is he going to get a chance at some point? I assume he will probably, and probably honestly, the better scenario for him would be probably if he gets minutes because Bobby's hurt, not because Brooke is hurt. Because if he's having to play with, Bobby and even Giannis, I mean, he didn't play a lot with Giannis last year. I think 76 minutes, but they were super terrible when those two were together. Again, it's like, should they be terrible when those two guys play together? Like, I feel like Giannis should be able to cover up for a lot in terms of Mamu's defensive limitations. But I do think, again, as we said, I think physically he just is going to be able to be hidden better when he's at the 4 defensively. And on the flip side, offensively, would you rather have his skill set of the 5 than the 4? Yeah, right. I mean, I would say yes, but I think what we saw at least last year is the defensive issues were just so big that whatever benefits there were potentially to having his skill set at the 5 just didn't come close to kind of evening that out. But give him credit. I mean, he was a rookie, right? There's a steep learning curve. A lot of those minutes early in the season came when the Bucks were missing more than just Brooke Lopez, right? They were missing Chris Middleton, or they were missing Drew during periods, right? Giannis was out with COVID when he got minutes then. So we'll see. I'm really curious to see if he does get minutes. Can he give you much more of a competent, at least defensive performance? And again, I don't think it's because of a lack of effort. So that's obviously, depending on how you look at it, a good or bad thing, right? The fact that he tries and they're really bad at defense, or the fact that at least you don't feel like he's ever going to be a guy that half-asses it or hurts you because he's not taking it seriously or kind of taking the craft seriously. So let's just say whatever the over-unders are for Mamu, as much as I feel like he was sneaky good offensively last year and carried over a lot of that to Summer League, I just, I hesitate to expect, a breakout season for him. And especially coming in as a two-way guy, obviously, there's some limitations on how much he can play 50 games, and he wouldn't be playoff eligible. So we'll see. They can obviously still convert him between now and obviously later next season. But at least for now, kind of the onus is on him to really make the Bucks have to play him. And certainly some encouraging signs in Vegas at least. But you also expect second-year guys obviously to also have a bit of a bump regardless.
All right, final really thoughts here from Summer League, and there's a number of guys maybe you want to bring up here, Frank. We've discussed the fact that as it currently stands, there is a roster spot, but also the two ways Mamu has one, AJ Green has the other. Lindell Wiggington was, arguably the Bucks' best player in Vegas. Luca Vildoza got hurt, didn't play the last 2 games, but I didn't think was all that impressive in the first few games that he played as well. So are you feeling strongly about anything to do with Lindell Wiggington, this second two-way spot with AJ Green? Is there anything else that really grabbed you?
I mean, I think you made the point, I think, last week. I just don't really see why AJ Green has a two-way spot. Like, why the Bucks gave AJ Green a two-way, basically the night of the draft, right? still is just sort of weird to me because I think you said it last week. He just doesn't seem like the kind of guy that profiles to being kind of a breakout future NBA rotation type guy. And that's extremely hard to find with a two-way spot. So let's be clear, right? Like most guys, whether it's Mamu, Wiggington last year, most of these guys are never going to be, playoff rotation guys. That's just extremely hard to find. But it just seems with AJ Green, you look at his numbers in Vegas, he comes, shot out of a cannon, hitting all those threes in the first game, finishes at 33% over the 5 games, hit 9 out of 27, I guess. That's fine, but why you would waste, well, I don't want to say waste, but why you would spend a two-way spot on a guy that, again, just does he look like he's going to defensively hold up against NBA level competition? Does he do stuff other than, shooting the ball well when he's kind of got his feet set? I just don't see it. So again, I mean, I think I made some Bronson Koenig jokes when they first announced this signing, and you guys may recall Bronson Koenig was the guy the Bucks signed their first two-way. I guess it was the first year that they had two ways, and then a few months later, I think realized their folly and cut him loose before the season started. And I mean, that's the upside, I guess, of two ways is, it's not like they're going to take a big luxury tax hit if they cut AJ Green loose and give Lindell Wiggington the other two-way spot, which again, I think this type of environment is well suited to a guy like Lindell Wiggington because he's got the ball in his hands and he's a shoot first guard, and he has the ability to kind of look for his own shot. But by the same token, 54% from the field, 46% from three, almost 5 assists a game, 18 points per game in 25 minutes. I mean, the guy played well, right? And did have 4 turnovers per game, but as you said, he was arguably the Bucks' best player. And does he profile like a guy that would fit well with the Bucks and their better players? Not really, because he's really not a shooter as much as he shot the ball well here, right? He's more of a kind of put the ball in his hands and go make plays, use his athleticism. But he at least has some physical tools that again, I think that's more of what I would look for in a guy that you roll the dice on, whether it's a second round pick, whether it's a two-way guy, or as we've talked about, even a first round pick, right? I would generally bet on physical tools, makeup, versus, just like a singular skill set, like shooting is as valuable as shooting is, especially on the Bucks. So yeah, my quick takeaways, AJ Green, I don't really see it. Luca Vildoza got hurt, so we didn't see him the last couple of games, but I mean, an NBA roster spot for him, like, again, this kind of chaotic environment is at a great, scene for him to really show what he can do. Maybe not, but he didn't look like he was going to be a good defensive player at the NBA either from what we saw in Vegas. So Vildoza, AJ Green, I don't really see it with those guys. Rajon Tucker, I mean, again, physical tool wise, I think he's got way more he's certainly much more like Wiggington than those other guys in terms of just having like NBA athleticism. I mean, Rajon's obviously bigger than Wiggington, but I think, Rajon's also obviously not a real ball handler, point guard type, and really didn't play particularly well. Didn't really shoot much in Vegas, which I thought was kind of interesting, but had some flashes of defense. I think he's one of those guys who, if he was 3 inches taller, would definitely be an NBA player, but just, again, when I saw him get some random minutes with the Bucks late in the season, that was one of the things that jumped out at me. Just comparing to what he looked like when he was at the Herd versus playing in the NBA, he just looked smaller. He just his lack of kind of proper wing size just kind of jumped out a bit more and just became a little more obvious, even with the athleticism that he has. So again, he's listed at 6'3", feel like he plays a little bit bigger than that, but. Again, as we said, I don't think he's got room for cracking through with the Bucks. He's going to be 26 by the time he the season starts. So I'd love to see him get a chance elsewhere and kind of figure some stuff out. But let's just say this: I don't think there was anybody in Vegas. I'm like banging on the door, trying to figure out John Horst's phone number to convince him to give a two-way spot or an NBA roster spot to. This felt more like kind of garden variety. These guys are playing in summer league for a reason, and we'll see if the Bucks have any other potential options with their last roster spot or with their two-way. But I definitely wasn't wowed by any of these kind of other guys that we saw, and perhaps most notably not wowed by AJ Green, the guy that actually does have that second two-way.
Yeah, it's difficult when you're a contender as well, and there's just not many roster spots there. That's why there was so much fascination, obviously, with MarJon Beauchamp. The Bucks haven't had a first-round pick for quite a while for us to at least watch and see if they can crack a real rotation. So it's just a difficult spot. And we even saw that with Hugo Besson, who we haven't really mentioned because he just barely played. And when he played, he looked a little bit rushed. He did look small. So it wasn't a great showing there for Hugo either, who didn't, as I said, didn't get a lot of opportunities. So I think overall, some intriguing stuff with MarJon to carry through to preseason. I'm sure we'll see him play in preseason, which will probably come around pretty quick. It's honestly about 10 weeks away. So that will be good fun. Should we wrap this up, Frank? Nothing else to get off your chest?
I'll just say quickly, the Pat Connaughton deal, we kind of, I think when he opted in, we sort of said, hey, there's going to be an extension here later in the summer when he's extension eligible. We saw that last week. I just haven't been on, I think, since that happened. And so I honestly, when he locked in the 5.7, my first thought was, because I think my placeholder going into the summer for his new deal, if he opted out, was 3 years, call it 27.5. I think I started at like 8.5 or something like that was what I put in my little cap spreadsheet. So the extension is only $1 million over that. So it's pretty closely aligned with sort of what I expected for a new contract. You layer that onto the current deal and, call it 4 years, 34 million or so is essentially what he's signed up for. So, and, per year, no arguments here. I was very curious if maybe giving the Bucks the opt-in this year, which, is going to potentially save them if he had signed for 8.5 this year. I mean, you're talking about upwards of $12-15 million potentially they save the Bucks in terms of luxury tax. I was curious if there's going to be more of a de facto kickback to Pat in that new contract. So, let's just say I was not expecting him to sign for like $7 million a year or something like that. I wasn't expecting him to sign for that previously. Definitely wasn't expecting him to sign for that. Now I was kind of curious, was he going to get like 10 million a year? So I think, a solid bit of business for both sides. Pat, I think the concern with him is just the age factor. He's 29. Hopefully just with the way he takes care of his body, and the skill he's shown, right? I mean, he's not like he's a guy that is heavily dependent on, just getting a bunch of dunks, even though he'll still do that occasionally. And, he obviously has a good physical tool set, but, his 3-point shooting has really come along the last couple of years. And, just the intelligence with which he plays on both ends, obviously has been really impressive. So hopefully he ages well. We're going to be having a lot of those conversations with the Bucks, Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, now Pat Connaughton, as they advance into their 30s. The concern that at some point you will start to see a drop off, but with Pat, obviously he's a couple years younger effectively than those guys. So, hopefully 2-3 more years of what we've seen would be great. If he, drops off a little bit thereafter, hey, again, for what he's already given this team and contributed to a championship run, Pat's one of those guys that I'd say his legacy is should be pretty well set with the Bucks, along with Bobby and, Brooke Lopez, in terms of role players that hopefully will always be well regarded by Bucks fans. But overall, obviously happy to have him back. And who would have thought a couple years ago, with all the furor over his previous contract, for him to win a championship, be such a huge part of that team, have another good playoff run this year, and now get a hefty new raise, nice new contract. These are nice stories. It's nice that we can be happy about these guys getting paid and sticking around. And obviously shout out to Pat and, just hopefully keep doing what he's been doing.
And just as we know, incredible character guys as well. They're at the Vegas and carrying on and cheering, both Bobby and Pat, who have just got those extensions. So familiarity in the locker room is clearly going to be a theme next year with all these guys that have come back. And as we say, no drama at the Bucks, which is what we love as well. Check out the Locked On NBA podcast. There is more stuff going on around the wider NBA with potential trades and all those types of things. So Locked On NBA we'll have you covered. Andy Larson's coming on the podcast tomorrow. He's a beat writer for the Utah Jazz. We can talk about Joe Ingles a lot. And we're also just going to say, what is going on in Utah? Because he is just fascinated that his job has been covering this team. He was supposed to be a contender for so long, and now they're clearly on the other end of the scale. So Andy will be good fun. We'll talk about Joe and the Jazz and everything else in between. So if you have any questions about Joe Ingles, you can put them in the YouTube comments, or you can hit us up on Twitter, and we'll fire them at Andy tomorrow. So that should be a lot of fun.
You think Andy must be happy that he can talk about something other than Don Mitchell trade scenarios and Rudy Gobert postmortems, right? I mean, I feel like most Jazz fans still enjoyed looking back on the Joe Ingles era. So I'm definitely really curious. I love to get Andy's take on, especially kind of Joe's defense and where it was pre-injury, right? Because that's probably, to me, the biggest question just is, how well is he going to look coming back defensively, and what we are seeing kind of pre-injury, which obviously Andy was watching him night in and night out. So really glad we're gonna have him on and get some Joe Ingles intel. Kane, we had you in Australia in the same building as Joe Ingles, but he doesn't like you. So he probably just thinks you're annoying. So it's just too bad. We're gonna have to go to some third parties to try to get some Joe Ingles takes.
I'm not good at my job, am I? I just could not get it done.
You should have gotten Joe Ingles' take on Joe. How good was your defense before that injury? Frank Madden wants to know: can you defend a Jason Tatum ISO, or are you going to look like a warmed over corpse coming back from that ACL? You couldn't. Easy questions to ask, Kane, and you just couldn't come through for us.
We were literally on live TV, and I was breaking down Joe Ingles coming to the Bucks, and he was sitting 2 steps away from me, probably listening to me talk about him, and it was very uncomfortable. But hopefully, I said all positive things. But he didn't want to. He wanted to take photos with his many fans in Australia. He didn't want to sit down for an interview, which fine. It's the off season. I can respect that. But anyway, we'll see what Andy has to say. As you said, he's watched him certainly closer than even I have. So he'll be able to fill us in with that. So make sure you check out that podcast. And we'll see. We'll see what else comes up over the next few weeks. We're about to enter the absolute depths of the off season here. But we'll keep rolling with podcasts. We appreciate the support, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.